We know where you are. We know where you're going. We know who you are. We know everything. We know who you call. We keep an eye on you at all times. No matter where you go, we will be watching. We are Google, and we see everything. We track your every move. We give that information to anyone who will pay. We know how much you're burning, how much you're consuming, how far you can go. We control the automation that controls your car. We have control of the autopilot. There's no sense in resisting. We will be watching. Wherever you go in your car or on the internet, we know what you consume, and we will influence how much and when you eat and drink. Take your somnambulance formula on schedule. Remember, no matter how much this silver city on the hill may glitter and gleam, you are being watched, and you are always under our direct control. Dissent will not be allowed. We will control your opinion. The algorithm knows all, hears all, sees all. We listen through your cell phone when it's turned off. We watch you through your computer. The algorithm never takes time off. Always watching, always calculating. We are Google, and we have your browser history. You will comply. Resistance is futile. You can run, but you cannot hide. We will allow you the illusion of freedom. It is only an illusion. We are Google. We control the internet. We know everything. We know where you are. We know where you're going. We know who you are. We know everything. We know who you call. We keep an eye on you at all times. No matter where you go, we will be watching. We are Google, and we see everything. We track your every move. We give that information to anyone who will pay. We know how much you're burning, how much you're consuming, how far you can go. We control the automation that controls your car. We have control of the autopilot. There's no sense in resisting. We will be watching. Wherever you go in your car or on the internet, we know what you consume, and we will influence how much and when you eat and drink. Take your somnambulance formula on schedule. Remember, no matter how much this silver city on the hill may glitter and gleam, you are being watched, and you are always under our direct control. Dissent will not be allowed. We will control your opinion. The algorithm knows all, hears all, sees all. We listen through your cell phone when it's turned off. We watch you through your computer. The algorithm never takes time off. Always watching, always calculating. We are Google, and we have your browser history. You will comply. Resistance is futile. You can run, but you cannot hide. We will allow you the illusion of freedom. It is only an illusion. We are Google. We control the internet. We know everything.
Oh, I gotta turn. Wait a minute. Oh crap.
Now what?
Yeah. Go ahead. I just gotta figure out how to turn the TV on.
Well, there's a button that says it has an Oscar Foxtrot switch and an Oscar November or Oscar November switch. So you need to turn it to the ON, the Oscar November.
I'm not going through the boat's wiring. I'm hooking directly up to the inverter.
So did you figure out what you fried on the boat when you got that arc, that gigantic blue arc and exploding sparks and robots coming to life?
It wasn't an exploding spark. It was just a little bitty spark.
Did you start the robot apocalypse, Ken? I've warned you about that.
They have. Who knows?
But you didn't bring back the dead. They're right?
No, nothing's crawling out of the ground anywhere.
And the car's okay. All right. So.
Would be coming up out of the water, but.
Oh, very, very Monster from the Black Lagoon. I love it. No, I'm sorry, Creature from the Black Lagoon. He's not the monster. The people were the monsters.
Yes, they were the bad guys.
Speaking of which, before we get started, I want to give a big shout out to Matt Teven, the artist, who of course did the Glue Trooper me and Gluey bolting out of the Tarbis and everything. He just put up another one at Mattline videos on could have been, should have been, would have been box art. And he did, for those of you who remember the old Aurora photoscopes, which they only made 4 of, 2 tanks and two tanks and 2 subs. And I don't think they sold that well. But he did a photoscope idea of the Rita, the boat from Creature from the Black Lagoon, and a little homage to it. So if you haven't seen that video, go watch it. You will absolutely, if you're a model person, you'll love it. And he not only has great art, he also has a lot of great ideas for kits that could have, should have, would have been. But so I want to make sure to give him a shout out for that. And that's, I think it's Mattline 1967. You guys probably all know how to find him. Anyway, today, let me just make sure I'm using the Yeti here. Yeah, it's using the Yeti. Okay. Guys, first off, welcome aboard. Glad you're here. Wonderful to, just... I was about to say wonderful to see you. I can't see anything. But wonderful to see me. Yay. That was very Sheldon Cooper.
See me?
They get to see me. And that should make your day. Yes, thank you, Sheldon. So anywho, there's a little story behind the intro there for those of you who saw it. I was watching Ed's Auto Reviews. He's a Belgian guy who loves American cars and does all these auto review shows. And I'm sure most of the car folks here are familiar with him. When he put a new one out, it's first of a 4-part series. It was on concept cars. And it was really good. He showed used some of that video I just showed you. That was the Ford, it was a Pontiac Firebird 2, I think. But their little promo demo, and I found a copy and downloaded and watched it, and I was like, with the auto drive and the guy in the control tower and their GPS position, the autopilot, I was thinking, that's very, for what they thought back then, very futuristic. But then I love the model work in the of the Highway of the Future, which I guess were slot cars, but. Okay, somebody's making a bunch of racket in the background.
Might be that she's making dinner.
Oh, well, okay. And I have no volume control here, so I can't turn it down. But anyway, so the thing I started thinking real quick, though, is that that could easily be flipped on you. All these cool labor-saving devices, knowing where you're at, automatic pilots, could easily go dark side and be used to control where you go and everything and all that stuff. So I decided to take shot for shot the exact same 2 pieces of video and make one the very optimistic, Tucker car of the future, and the other one sort of the dark side. So, everything's got a yin and a yang, and I just thought that was a nice little juxtaposition. But anyway, we're going to be talking about concept car kit models later on. Well, we're going to kick off with some interesting camo schemes. Now, I had seen a few airplanes that are not known for being camouflaged, but Glue Trooper Tommy Anderson sent me this picture which I believe he did this artwork himself. And this is actually not just a fantasy idea. He actually sent me the article. I think it was called Bullseye 2, but there was talk about using the B-58 Hustler in Vietnam. And it was going to be sort of a pathfinder. Since it was fast enough to keep up with all the fighters, they would come in low, because, they were losing bombers and everything. This is the mid-60s. It was going to come in low and use its sophisticated systems to hit targets, and then the Phantoms and F-105s would come in on its wing, and they could just all bomb on command. And interesting concept. And they took it out and tested it. Now, supposedly, they actually did paint one of the airplanes like this, but no one has ever found a photograph of it. So, and it was a very short-lived thing. So either they never got around to painting it, or they painted it and nobody bothered to take a picture, or the picture was classified, maybe lost to the ages. Nobody really seems to know for sure. But the thing was, the program actually worked in testing. And the Air Force, the general that was running the Pacific Air Forces, thought this would be a great way to reduce casualties and get in, get out, and all the expensive toys on the Hustler would make it much more survivable and higher bombing accuracy. And I was thinking, that is a beautiful looking paint scheme. So but then apparently, according to the article, the program was killed because McNamara was very scared. Remember, the B-58 crews were all SAC alert bomber crews. I mean, nuke bomber crews. They were extremely highly qualified, the best of the best. It was a tricky airplane, so you had the best pilots, and they were familiar with all of the latest secret, super secret equipment. And his big concern was, if one of these things got shot down, especially if the crew got captured, they'd not only have access to a bunch of the technology, but they would have this prize crew. I mean, pilots are already prized POWs. So he said, nope. Also, the B-58, for anybody who knows anything about this airplane, extremely maintenance intensive. The cost of this operation was going to be very high, but also, apparently, because the airplane has basically the skin forms the fuel tanks, they figured it's going to be very subject to ground fire. And if somebody gets lucky, even with small guns, they could bring it down. So its vulnerability down low to ground fire, everything just scared them away from it. But this is a really cool paint scheme. I didn't find anybody that painted their models this way. I found the upper left is some video game art, and this one, of course, the big one is what Tommy did. But I'm thinking, man, that would be an awesome paint scheme. And he's only guessing that this is what it looked like because, again, no photographs of service. If anybody's got one, that would be, or knows where to find one of the real airplanes, that would kind of be the Bigfoot of the photo of Bigfoot for model builders. But I think that would be an awesome looking thing to put on the shelf, put the story with it and everything. And there's a chance to do something different. But I'm looking at the comments because I see people referencing the comments. I've been able to read them.
Where did the artist who did this get the idea to do it this way?
Well, I think Tommy did it himself, and it was from an article that he found. I don't know if it's an article he found. Actually, I think it's someone he interviewed who talked about this long forgotten little project they did back in the mid '60s. Where, hold on, was it Buckeye? Was that? Hold on, let me open my email up real quick. You know what? If you guys don't, it's not a long email. I'll just give you the story straight up. I tried to remember it all. And Tommy, I want to thank you for that. And let's see here. He was helping a friend in the UK who wanted to model the Hustler in Vietnam. So he created that scheme. And apparently at least 4 B-58 Hustlers were painted in the Southeast Asia paint scheme and had 4 hard points for low-level bombing operations. The tests were successful, but fear they would lose one in low-level combat would be a PR nightmare for the Air Force. Here's the research. It was Operation Bullseye, Low-Level Hustler 1, and then Operation Bullseye, Low-Level Hustler 2. It was a classified program. 66.
Tommy, thank you in the comments.
Oh, Tommy, absolutely. Thank you for sending that. And It was 66 to 67. And that could be a video by itself. In fact, Tommy, with your consent, I might go ahead and make just a video about this, what you sent me, just using what you sent me in the email, because basically you wrote the script for me. I won't sit here and read the whole thing, because it's, we're doing a live stream. That would get a little boring. But great work. And by the way, while we're talking about cool Air Force stuff and everything, real quick, next month on my day, I'm on vacation. I'm going to be going out to California for a couple of days on my own to spend some time with Mike, and we're going to hit some museums and do a whole bunch of other cool stuff, and I'm sure a lot of videos will come out of that. So yahoo, I'll keep you guys posted on that. Now, so here's a great idea for, if you want to do something different. And that's not the only airplane. I found a few aircraft and camo schemes that I did not expect. The next one we're going to look at is a Greek Hellenic Air Force F-94 Starfire. And the Greeks camouflaged a lot of their airplanes, and plenty of pictures of their F-84s. But I didn't, this is and I'm pretty sure this is like an artist rendering, but this is the only picture you can find. But I thought that was cool because the F-94 in American service, they're always silver. And it's kind of a Southeast Asia-esque. I can't swear to the authenticity of this. This may just be a model somebody did. And chroma keyed, or I'm not really, but I thought it looked cool. And it's always funny to see this camouflaged airplane with the big bright white radome on the nose. Couldn't even go with subdued black, huh, guys? But
an accent.
Yeah.
Tommy Anderson said that he just did it by guessing.
Well, I think it's a good guess. I think it really is.
And I said to him that's usually how the Air Force did it.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way: if they did put the Southeast Asia scheme on the airplane, I would imagine it would have looked very much like that. And I mean, you basically overlaying the Phantom scheme on it, and I think it looks awesome that way. They should have done one of that just for promotional purposes.
Nathan is asking you to give a shout out to Celebrating Vintage Model Kits channel.
Vintage Model Kits channel. Okay. Well, let's give them a shout out. And I'm pretty sure I've been to that channel, so what I'm thinking of, it's really awesome.
It's the guy who does a different kit every little video from like the 50s.
Are we talking about Steele or what's his name? I watch his stuff. Is it Bob Steele? Yeah, I think I know who he's talking about. Let me check that real quick. I'm pretty sure, because I watch a lot of, he does a lot of the old wooden kits and everything too. Let me just type this in here real quick. I'm pretty sure I'm subscribed. Vintage Gerald Steele. Vintage Model Kits. They're celebrating vintage model kits. Okay.
Yep.
Howdy and welcome back to Celebrating.
I think that's that's a different one. There's also Gerald Steele's, and I do watch this one, and I just subscribed. I have seen it. In fact, the one I opened up was a Panther jet, which I actually have. But I have seen his work, and it's great stuff. Hey, it's vintage model kits. How can you go wrong?
That's right.
All right. So now, the next bizarre camo scheme is the one that I used as the thumbnail for this. This is a PBY Catalina in camouflage. Now, here's what's really cool. You'll notice that the star on this Catalina has the red dot, which means it's pre-43. And this is what our airplanes were sporting before the war, and I thought maybe this is something somebody made up. According to the what was accompanied this photograph, in the Philippines before the war began, and just before the war began, when everybody knew storm clouds are on the horizon, the crew in this particular squadron decided on their own to camouflage their airplanes, and just kind of invented the camouflage scheme as they went along. Now I know the Royal Air Force camoed their Catalinas and their Corsairs and stuff, but I had never seen a United States Navy one that wasn't blue or in rescue colors. And it's really a nice paint scheme, and it looks like a pretty effective camouflage scheme too. I know that the reason the Navy liked to go with the obviously the blue was because they're out over the water most of the time. But I guess these guys are more worried about the thing being attacked on the ground. That's my guess anyway. And because I know a lot of these cats operated out of jungle bases. And I'm not 100% sure, but I believe you can tell the vintage of the Catalina by the fact that it's got the spinners, and it doesn't have the big blisters. It has the flat doors, and I think that's the early model, but the consolidated. And the airplane, if I'm not mistaken, the airplane had basically the bulk of the wing was a fuel tank. And I want to say it used a lot of fabric in the wing, but I may be mistaken on that. But it was a mixed construction airplane. But I had never seen an American camouflage Catalina in like jungle camouflage before. And that's another... Unfortunately, of course, unlike today, not everybody was running around with, cell phone cameras or even color photos. So a lot of these airplanes, there's no photo record of them, unless or if you do, you find it in real obscura. I go out in line and look for some of these things, can't find it. But contrary to the myth, not everything in the world is online. But I think that's an awesome looking paint scheme and something interesting to do with a PBY. And a lot of times these guys who do these things, they do their own research. And, this is again where model building can be a really good resource for, history. And I just watched about a 20-odd minute, I think it was Rex's Hangar, or longer than that. It was a long documentary on the history of the SBD Dauntless. And it's like, these guys, they must have a stack of books, because some of the stuff they come up with is so, down in the weeds. I love that kind of stuff. Now, this airplane I am actually familiar with. This is a RA-5 Vigilante in camouflage, and they did field them in camouflage for about 6 months. Now, of course, usually the Navy aircraft were just gray, gray over white, but because this is a recon plane and was flying over the battlefield after the bombs dropped, somebody thought, hey, maybe we should do like the Air Force, put that Southeast Asia kind of pattern on it, and they did. And there was another photo I couldn't find this time of one trapping on a carrier. Now, I know a fellow who flew Vigilantes, and I've known two people who were mechanics on them. And the airplane, for its time, was an impressive piece of equipment. I think it was the largest or the second largest airplane the largest single pilot airplane to fly off a carrier deck. And anyway, they got away from it after a short while. I guess they figured it really wasn't doing anything for them. But there's there's only a handful of photos out there. And I don't know what's up with that nose cone. It's like the guy who painted the nose cone and the guy who painted the fuselage, weren't talking to each other. I think
maybe the radar fried the paint.
What's that?
Maybe the radar fried the paint.
Nah, I just think the guy took the nose cone off and accidentally flipped it upside down and put the wrong color on top. But and when you do that, you just pull the nose cap off and paint it flat black and put it back on. It still looks cool. But anyway, I think the Vigilante looks great in camo. Of course, most airplanes do. Camouflage is such a cool way to paint things. And that's not exactly the Air Force pattern. It's got the little jagged teeth on the demarcation line. And it seems like they're using some different tones. I'm not sure what's with the dark green patches there. But anyway. And judging by the flaming red flight suits that they're wearing, I'm assuming that this is a test aircraft. Although I don't think you have to test a paint job. You may want to test it to, take pictures and see how it blends. But anyway, that's another, very rare paint scheme. I don't even know how many planes they put it on, and but I do know it was operational for like one squadron on one cruise, which would be like 6 months or something like that. And then he's like, "No, we're not going to do that anymore." But it does look like an Air Force airplane in those colors. That may be what they really didn't like about it. But speaking of Navy aircraft in Air Force colors, this one that's coming up, I had not seen before. I know that the F-14 was painted in desert camo when they sold them to the Iranians, but this is actually, and I think this photo was taken in the 90s, this is actually an active duty F-14 that was put in camouflage. And I couldn't find out any much in the way of details on it. And I don't know if the whole squadron was done that way or if this was a one-off. But it looks freaking awesome. And there you have the dark colored radome also. And that would make I'm not really sure if is that a faded blue and gray, or I don't even know how you describe that color. But shoot, that looks cool. And looks like it wouldn't be that hard to put that paint scheme on the airplane. You know, people don't think about it, but when the F-14's wings are swept back like that, and this goes for the B-1 and the pretty much all swept wing aircraft, this is basically a delta wing aircraft at this point. And it's technically not a delta, but it kind of is. The tail sort of fills in, and that thing looks so awesome like that. And that paint job just does it. I'd like to find out a little more information on these things, just so I've got an F-14. That'd be a cool way to paint it. But if my guess is a paint. I thought it might be Aggressor because it does have that Aggressor look a little bit to it, and maybe it was. Maybe it was being an OP-4 aircraft, or and that does look like it. Obviously the desert in the background, so I'm not sure. And there were several squadrons that were doing strikes in Iraq during the Gulf War that were counted. Okay, I did not know that. And somebody see the P-38 found off Hawaii? No, I didn't. But anyway, I think that is wicked cool. And you can't see it in this photo because I cropped it down so you can see the F-14, but it's flying in formation with a couple of Air Force jets, which makes you think it might be some kind of Aggressor thing. I don't know what the underbelly looks like, but I'm guessing it's like the faded gray. Now, another camo scheme that I was familiar with, which is really kind of cool. During World War II, obviously the British had to use everything that flew, including very, very outdated aircraft. And the old Handley Page 4245, which you guys, a lot of you aviation buffs, I'm sure recognize the airplane. Now, I built one in the airline markings, but the military basically commandeered the few that were still flying and put them in RAF recognition yellow on bottom and camouflage on top. And of course, they didn't go into combat. They were using them as rear area transports. I don't think any of them survived the war, unfortunately. Accidents. I think one was torn up at its tie down in bad weather. But to see this biplane airliner in camouflage is really pretty cool. And I've got another one. I'm actually looking at it. It's the Airfix kit. And I think I may just go ahead and paint it up like that. It's not a hard paint scheme to do. And I would pre-paint the struts and everything, pre-paint the wings. But that's just cool. There's something about the yellow, and I know it's identification yellow so you don't get shot down by your own people, which makes perfect sense. I mean, the Germans wound up putting yellow on their airplanes after the Battle of Britain because they were getting tired of fracture side incidents. They come back, Messerschmitts had come back running out of fuel, 4 or 5 minutes of fuel left on board, and then they got to dodge their own flak because the gunners couldn't tell a Messerschmitt from a Spitfire at that distance. And the same thing happened on both sides. So everybody started, and yellow was the color everybody wanted to use. But of course, I guess they figured, a little bit of yellow is not as bad as, it wouldn't give you away. Just painting they're doing what they can with what they got. Airplane like that would be kind of hard to camouflage because it's got so many, exposed ladder or surfaces like the struts that there's really no way you can look at the airplane and hide all the yellow or hide, it's kind of, but they're doing what they can. And again, I'm guessing probably more when it's sitting on the ground to make it a little harder to see. But that is a neat looking airplane. And another airplane, I'll get to the what if aircraft in a minute. Now, I did not know, but the A6 Intruder was actually camouflaged a few times. Every A6 I'd ever seen. What? Every A6 I'd ever seen was in regular navy gray and or grays. And I stumbled onto this. This was apparently, for a while, a couple of squadrons were putting camo on airplanes. Now, the ones on the left, if I'm not mistaken, were more of kind of a retro paint scheme. But I don't know what the story was on that. But the one on the right, from what I could gather, that was just the way the squadrons elected to paint them for a while. And again, and that's a more recent photo, too. That's not too long before they retired. So this is, well, I shouldn't say that. I think it was in the 80s. But, it looks really, really good. And the reason I bring all this is because we all get the models and, you wind up with a shelf full of gray Navy planes or dark blue Navy planes that all kind of blend. Here's a chance to just do something different. And I personally think the A6, that one on the right, well, I think they both look cool. And it is a fairly low-vis paint scheme, so yay. But if you've got an A6 sitting on the shelf you want to do something different with, there's your opportunity. Another one that I had seen in camo, but you normally see it in silver, of course, is the mighty Air Force F-86. And I had seen pictures of them in camouflage, but that was all a post-Korean War thing. But then this is the late model. You can tell by how big the fuselage is and the 420mm cannons, the big intake and everything. Also, it has the raising canopy, not the sliding canopy. If you notice, the canopy raises up. It doesn't slide rearward. And I want to say that's the H model. Anyway, point being that F-86, another airplane you don't normally associate with camo, but it looks good in it. And there were guard units and stuff that did that. And I don't really know what the rationale was behind it. Maybe I don't know. Maybe that was just kind of popular at the time. But good looking airplane, but it's rare to see them in a camouflage paint scheme. Another one that was an airplane we're all used to seeing the F-16 in camo. That's not a big deal. But this camouflage scheme was actually kind of, I think, a one-off, sort of the Southeast Asia kind of campaign. This was, I believe, an Aggressor airplane. But you don't normally see them in that kind of paint scheme. And it really looks most fetching like that. Camo makes everything better. So of course, obviously this is a model, a really nice one too, but I think he said that was an Aggressor paint scheme. But the retro paint schemes also became popular for a while. The World War II camo type paint schemes and the F-15. I've seen a couple of them done it with D-Day stripes and stuff like that. And of course, they don't paint the whole squadron that way. But then again, I have seen some models of planes like this with the retro. In fact, when I went to JaxCon, there was a guy who had a table full of he had like 17 F-15 models that he built, every one of them bloody flawless. And they had just about every conceivable paint scheme, including ones like this. And, when you're... a guy I know that flew the F-15, I was like, talk about low visibility. He goes, who cares? You're driving an Eagle. When you're flying an F-15, have a flashy paint scheme on. You don't care. You're flying an F-15. F-15s don't hide. When was the last time you saw an eagle hiding from its prey? But, and they also did it with an F-15E. That's the Mud Hen. And I'm sorry I failed to get the story on that. I think that was a test scheme, but I like it. It just says, you know, let's go bomb stuff. And think about it now. I think I've seen some F-15E box art where they had a scheme like that on it, so that may not be that uncommon a scheme for them. But there were a couple of what-if airplanes that I thought were cool. I was wondering if anybody ever put something like a P-80 or a Panther or a Cougar in camo. I couldn't find anything. But I did find some what-if, and one of them is if the F-107 had gone into production, this is probably what it would have looked like as a Southeast Asia, you know, ground attack aircraft. And, you know, one of those great airplanes that never was. But, again, dashing, very, very fetching. That Southeast, that two green, you know, sand colored paint scheme, just you could put that on your bicycle and it would work. And the last one in this category that was a what if airplane, and it was talked about, but they never went through with it. Oops, wrong one. Sorry. Hold on, let me get back here. There it is. It was the F-106, the Delta Dart, which was a pure interceptor. They had bad luck with the F-102s that they sent over, which were camouflaged like that. We lost one in a dogfight, and the airplane was an interceptor. It was not intended to be an escort aircraft or a dogfighter. It was supposed to go up and shoot down bombers. Trying to use it to tackle MiG-21s was not what the plane was designed for. It was not what it was optimized for. But they did talk about sending the 106s over there, and I think the Air Defense Command's attitude was, oh, hell no, those are our airplanes. They're interceptors. And what are you going to use to intercept the commie hordes that they come over the horizon, you know, if we got all of our planes down in Vietnam? But it is, of course, again, elegant. I think I saw a picture of one painted in camo, but that might have been an artist's conception. It may not have been an actual airplane. I don't know of one ever being camo, but man, it sure looks awesome. But these are all airplanes that either were rare or proposed camouflage paint schemes, and I just saw that as an opportunity to model something different. You know, get out of our usual comfort zone and make it a you know, have some fun with it. But everything looks better in camouflage. So that was the first thing I thought I would let's see. Okay, take that picture down now. There you go. There's the button. I get so many pictures in here sometimes it gets a little hard to keep track of them all. But those rare schemes were. I remember I actually did an X3 stiletto, and I said, okay, what if an airplane like that had gone operation? I'll put it in camouflage, hung missiles on it, and everything. Looked absolutely ridiculous, but had a good time with it though. And I also let's see. I should read some comments. You're right. No, I had to mix the paint for the Douglas World Cruisers. Nathan's talking about they weren't actually olive drab. That's correct. I put olive drab and looked at compared it, and I was like, that's not the right shade. I had to darken it. And by the way, on the Douglas World Cruiser, there's actually two kinds of green on there. The fabric has one, but in certain areas, like in the wing roots and stuff, they have a different shade. But depending on how far in the weeds you want to get on 1/72 scale. Chocolate brown. Yeah, that's kind of what they are. That's one of the problems of that era. Most of the photos are black and white. And the museum boys have to preserve the aircraft. That sometimes changes the way they look a little bit. Also, it's the light you photograph them in. When you see them in the museum, they look the one that's left looks a little darker. You take them outside in the sunlight, you're like, because lighting has a huge impact on how colors are perceived. So, let's see. I also said we were going to talk about X-plane kits. And we had a hold on, let me hang on just a second here. Open. Where did I put that? I'll tell you what, as long as we're working on the Douglas World Cruisers, let me just pop a picture up here real quick. These are the ones I'm working on. Again, there's a lot of really bright light because this is taken right underneath the light, which makes them lighter. I did weather the top of it and fade them out a little bit, but that is an olive drab mixed with, I think it was black, to darken it. And the floats are all, well, everything was painted with one paint. But around the wing roots, there's a lighter green area, and it pops up on some of the struts also. And, of course, there were 5 airplanes built, and although they were originally identical, I'm sure some changes have taken place over time. But just wanted to point that one thing. And some of the struts are painted the same color, and some of the struts are not. So it's when you're building these things, there's a whole bunch of places to go wrong. Let's see. Now, where's the image I was going to look for? Oh, great. Now I got that Tucker theme stuck in my head. Okay, we were going to talk about some X-planes a little bit. X-plane kits. Mike and I stumbled onto this Lindbergh kit in original condition at Lou's Hobby Shop in San Pedro, California, and I couldn't believe it, except for just a little damage on the box, which Mike had fixed. It was amazing. But I remember having built the Revell version of this kit. It's not a hard kit. It's pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, X3 was kind of a failure as a project, but due in no small part to the fact that they didn't have the engines for it they were supposed to have. And but it's one of those things that it's fun to play with, because if you decide not to make it in the test colors, but to make it in, like a operational airplane, looks kind of cool. Although the tail on that airplane was way too small, and had it actually gotten up to speed, I think that thing would have gone out of, well, it actually did go out of control. That's how they learned about something called inertial roll coupling. The tail was way too small, and the pilot was flying the airplane. You'll notice all the weight is in the center of the airplane around the engines where the fuselage bulges, because it wasn't area ruled, where they taper in the fuselage where the wings are at.
Communication terminated.
Somebody, Ken, I think Ken just dropped. Oh, there's Steve. Flight attendant crew tracking.
Now I got dumped.
Okay, let me merge you back. Hello? Branca Tower calling. You there? Hello? Hello? Guys? It says I'm on a conference call. Steve? Ken? Hello? Ken? It says I got you here. All right, let's try this again. Joyce.
Communication terminated.
Yes, we know, dear. Okay, reasons. Let's try this. Hey, Ken.
Hey, Max.
Okay, let's try this again. Let me see if I can get Steve back. Started just dropping calls. There he is. Merge with Ken. Hey, okay, merge. Ooh.
That dropped again.
Yeah, you know what? I wonder if I hit hold instead of merge. No, I hit merge. Anyway, we're both back on board. We're all back on board.
Yeah, the worst part about that kit is the windows.
Is it? What's wrong with them?
Putting them in. I mean, you got to put them in before you put the plane together.
Yeah.
And then you got to tape them off so you don't get paint on them if you paint it.
Well, one of the things I started doing with kits like that is taping the window before I put it in.
Yeah.
but I know that Bruce, the Mystic Modeler Ships, has been using the liquid stuff, and I forget which one. He talked about it in his last video where he built the Beach 18, and I forget it was Vallejo or which one, but he was really happy with it. And apparently, one of the problems I had with the old stuff was that when you put it and when you try to paint along the edge with it to get it, it would kind of contract back a little bit. And so I know a lot of guys will use the real thin Tamiya tape on the edges and then just use the liquid mask to do the middle area. And but he said the stuff he used worked real good, so you can always check on that. But one of the things that I started doing, and I did it with the Aero Commander, and I did it with the Caribou, was painting the fuselage before I even put it together. And then, because the thing had a long row of oval windows, I mean, it's going to be a nightmare to tape all that off. I did have to obviously tape off the cockpit canopy, just wouldn't get around that. But then when I built the model, of course, you're going to have the seam. But now you just put a piece of tape on the near the seam, a pair of pieces of tape, and then you can file away. And I'm going to kill the video here for just a second because I've got to scratch my nose. What is it about when the camera comes on, my nose starts to itch? It's like the universe is, laughing at me again. Well, anyway, but that way you can file down the seam and everything and putty and sand and putty and respray. And then when you're done, you use the air gun to put a little brush on there to keep you from having a hard line where the tape was at, and it works pretty good. It's not going to win any awards, but for a shelf sitter, it works fine. And it's certainly a lot easier. To me, it's a lot easier than. And if you can find a rivet line to tape around, that makes it real easy because the rivet line hides any buildup seam from the extra paint. And again, if you look real close to the model, I can see your little tape line there. I'm like, yeah, but you can't see it when it's sitting on the shelf from 5 feet away. And
just put it up high.
My motto: never look too close. There are definitely flaws out there to be found if you're looking for them. But I tell people, if you want to build an X-plane, I think an X-15 or an X-3 are probably the easiest ones to start with. They tend to be fairly straightforward kits. However, my understanding is that some of these kits, like Tamiya, of course, typical of Tamiya, it's got all kinds of detail. You've got that rather complex pattern on the window, and which, by the way, is painted black, not orange. So it can get a kit like that is definitely not the beginner model builder's kit, but it's obviously a great subject matter. One of the hardest parts I think about Glamorous Glennis is matching the correct orange, getting the paint color right, and
that's an issue.
And by the way, well, you and I saw it sitting at when we were at the
Udvar Hazy.
Yeah, Udvar Hazy. Although it was all wrapped up in paper, and I wonder if real quick if I can find that picture. I stumbled onto it just the other day, and of course I'm telling me, oh, remember where you put that? Which I promptly did not. Let's see, trips.
It's probably at the Udvar Hazy because they were rebuilding the main downtown building.
Could be.
It was all covered up.
Yeah, it was all wrapped up. I think they're moving it out there permanently. Not really sure, but
I think they're going to leave that downtown.
The wings were off it too.
No.
That was probably so they could transport it easier.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, let me see.
They probably did that to all the airplanes that were there, so it would make it easier for them to rebuild the building without damaging anything.
Okay, where is this?
I have heard that half of it is back open now.
Yeah, half of it's been back open for a while, but the other half is no date as to when it would be finished.
Oh, it's a government contract. What do you expect?
Oh man,
Lowest bidder.
Pretty
Air
much.
and space. Okay, here is a picture of it in the old Air and Space Museum. And according to this, that box art is not exactly correct. But then again, lighting, remember, the box art showing it, you know, out in naked sky, whereas this is inside a building, glass roof, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. But still worth noting that, like I say, that orange is really hard to get right. Man, where's that freaking... man, okay, museums, air and space. This is a different trip. Oh, it was Udvar Hazy. Okay, D.
Bill Paul says it was moved. It's back downtown.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, actually, I'm kind of glad to know that, because I don't want to... How do I say this ever so delicately? I love the Udvar Hazy, but I sort of feel the stuff that's in the Udvar Hazy is, shall we say, the B level stuff, you know. They put the A-listers downtown. I mean, the Spirit of St. Louis, Glamorous Glennis, the Wright Flyer, the Apollo 11, they go downtown. If you're...
And the first Gemini.
There's Gemini, the X-15, the D558 Phase 2. If you're at Udvar Hazy, you're not exactly, you know, necessarily top tier.
Well, they got stuff at the Udvar Hazy that just won't fit downtown, too.
Well, that's fair. That's true. And, okay, museums, air and space, Chicago Museum, Mather, law enforcement, Military Museum, Massachusetts, Pima, Railroad Hall of Fame. Yeah. Titusville, USAF Museum, USS Mass. I go to a lot of museums. Okay. Clearly, I don't know where I put the Udvar Hazy stuff. Good move, Max.
A little bit of interesting information about the facility downtown. The lighting, they did have, I think they had mercury vapor in there, but as an experiment, and apparently they've done this for years now, the lighting tubes that run along the top of the museum are actually powered by microwaves.
How do you do that?
Well, I don't know.
Oh, tease us, Ken. You're going to tell us what you do, and then you're not going to tell us how? Fine, thank you.
Apparently they have some chemical or whatever that emits light when hit by microwaves. It's supposed to be really efficient.
We live in the future. 5 minutes after I end this live stream, we're going to find all those pictures. Oh, well, doesn't matter. Oh,
and you can probably cook your lunch while you're there, too.
Oh, wait a minute. What? How long ago was that we were there, Steve? You don't remember what month it was?
Oh, I don't remember. It was cold.
I bet you.
Oh,
Burt Rutan's airplane is there too.
Oh yeah. We definitely, I see that. And they had the Enterprise, the model of the Enterprise underneath it for a while there too.
Which one, the small one or the big one?
The big 14-footer. 11-footer. Every time you read, somebody's got a different length on that thing.
We'll just have to measure it next time I'm there.
Yeah. Hold on. I haven't given up yet. Never give up, never surrender.
Okay.
JD Hobbies, Jeep Build, Cannon Flight Test, Lockdown.
Actually, when I was a kid, I was one of the people on my paper route. She was a tour guide at the Smithsonian. And yeah, she's telling me some interesting things. That's how I found out about the. Is that how I found out about the microwave? I think so. Anyway, her husband was a B-29 pilot.
Did she go to Faber College, Ken?
Senator and Mrs. Blutarski.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Animal House. Faber University. Knowledge is good.
Oh, okay, whatever. Anyway,
now a tour guide at Universal
Studios. Yeah.
well, she said that when they fly missions, he would fly to the drop zone, and then after that, the plane was just so physically demanding to fly that he was just wore out, and the co-pilot actually flew the plane back.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I know a guy that flew forestry in a B-17. He said the same thing, that it was a real muscle. You know, it just required a lot of muscle to fly the airplane. So, anywho, so let's get to the next thing. Well, the point I was going to get at was just that these things can be hard to match. And if you're going to build X-plane models, I think the X-15 or the X1, not the X1, the X-15 or the X3 are usually pretty straightforward kits. Nobody's gotten in the weeds making those kits too complicated. But like this little special hobby X1E that I've got here, this kit was and it's tiny 1/72 scale kit. I was amazed at how intricate and complicated it was. Now, I made it wheels up to put on a stand, but they had a couple of different sets of controls for it, depending on which version you wanted to make, a couple of different cockpits. It was ridiculously detailed. They had about 3 different versions in something this small, and it was actually a bit of a challenge to build. In fact, the canopy doesn't actually sit down all the way, and as much as I filed it and fit it. But again, you know, if I'm this far away, I can't tell. But when I look up close, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And so if you're going to get something by Special Hobby, you've got a job ahead of you, and you're going to need your Optivisor and all that stuff, because they are really fine on the detail. But it's really amazingly detailed kit, and it's designed to be made wheels down, so you can set it down. You don't have to put it on a stand. I mean, I think the X1s don't look good with the wheels down. They only look good cleaned up, so put it on a stand. But not a beginner kit by any means. The old Aurora kits, the old Revell kits, they're pretty straightforward. The new stuff, just an insane amount of detail on some of them. And in 1/72 scale, you're like, blah, 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 blah. So, you know, you need to get like the Fantastic Voyage and shrink yourself down so you can fit the components. But
when did they ever paint the X1 white?
Well, that's the X1E. Remember, there were several different X1s. And the X1A was largely silver. The X1 we know was orange, and they frequently got repainted depending on what they were doing. In fact, find that picture. Look for another picture. Oh, that's okay, guys. I know where this one is. I think famous last words. And here we go. Aha! I knew where that one was. See, here's the X1B by Strombecker, and you tell it's basically an aluminum finish on the outside. And that's the one that they actually had Chuck Yeager's image on, and I don't know if he got any money out of the deal or anything. I would, being a historical figure, maybe they were able to use his image for free. I don't know. I would think they paid him something. But, so X1, X1A, X1B, X1E, that was the X1 was a airframe that just wouldn't die. And they learned, it was a great research plane. They learned a lot from it. And there's just about every version has been made. Now, again, the Strombecker kit's a good one. If someone wants to build an X-plane, you want something that's not too complicated. The trick in that is painting it, because you can just shoot it with aluminum and it'll look okay. But if you really want to get in the weeds, start using metallizers and everything, that's second only maybe to a B-29 for an airplane that's got a bunch of different shades of aluminum on it. And
was the B a more powerful version?
Well, you notice, Ken, it also has a completely different cockpit. Remember, the X1A has that. It's just a 50 caliber bullet, basically. It's got that completely sloped windshield, and the B model, they put a regular cockpit on it. And of course, the research airplanes, they were literally learning as they went. And
they discovered that as they approached, when Yeager was approaching the speed of sound, that the elevator became less and less effective.
Well, yeah, but I think they'd already worked on the flying tail on that.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It has the ability to be able to move the angle of attack up and down on the entire tail, which they determined, okay, we can move it far enough that way that we can actually steer the airplane as we go transonic.
And Ken, it works that way on modern airliners. We have what's called a stab trim and stabilizer trim. This model's a little small, but let me see if I got something over here.
Is that what the jack screw does?
A lot of them are, yes. A lot of them use jack screws. I don't have any really big models here. What's maybe 262 doing over there?
It flew there.
I had to rearrange the shelves and put the Godzillas up there. And I found this sitting over in the corner. I made it with the gear in the process of retracting. Anyway, okay, well, I'll use this. That'll work. Now, and of course, the ME-262 had a fixed tail, by the way. It just had a regular elevator. And I'm sure most of you guys know you got your horizontal stabilizer and right here, and it's a little tail wing. And then you have the elevator on back that goes up or down to deflect the nose up or down. Well, as the Fates would have it, when they built the X1 series, they put the the horizontal stabilizer does have an elevator like a regular airplane, but the entire stabilizer can pivot also. It's called a flying tail. And so the whole stabilizer assembly can move up and down as well as just the elevator moving. And that changes the trim on the airplane substantially. And not to get into, deep dive into aerodynamics, but basically, as you bludgeon through the air in one of these things, you're forcing all of the air out of the way. And when you do that, okay, let's see if we get a better. As this thing is fighting its way through the sky, that nose punching through a hole in the sky creates a shock wave. And the faster you go, the more that shock wave spreads. Well, as the shock wave spreads out, it can start to blank out the controls. They become less effective. They're not getting smooth air over them because the shock wave is disturbing them. And it's considered a force field. You've seen how a boat goes to the water and the bow causes the bow waves. Well, anyway, what happens is the airplane is moving so fast. Now, this is why Russian jets, if you ever notice, and I do have a model to show you for that. Have a MiG-25.
Well, the MiG-15, the F-15, and I know the F-15, I believe the F-18, the entire stabilizer moves.
Yep. Yeah, it's a stabilizer. It's all one piece. But you see how big the twin tail fins are on this Foxbat, because it's made to do Mach 2.5 plus. Okay, right? I think one even got Mach 3 or close to it. They burned up the motors doing it. But they need those gigantic, and you'll notice there's also stabilizers under the bottom. There's more tail sticking down underneath. Okay? Now, and the MiG-23 actually has a folding stabilizer. When it takes off, comes down. Now, the reason they have to do this is the shock waves that these airplanes produce start blanking out the controls. And the elevator will just be, or the ailerons can just be out there moving in nothing, because the shock wave, and they're up like, I can't bite the air. But you get the whole stabilizer to move, and you get some pitch control. And they did that on the X1. It's called a flying tail. And that little trick kept us
control too.
Yeah, and that little bit of technology kept us ahead of the Russians for some time. That's why the MiG-15 could not go supersonic. If it went supersonic in a dive, they probably would lose control of the airplane. And remember, General Bond was killed in a MiG-23 when it started going real fast, and the throttle was jammed. He couldn't shut the fuel off. He couldn't pull up without the plane disintegrating. And he really got boxed in a corner. This was a problem that was known to Russian pilots. And that was supposed to be his Finney flight. So the airplane basically disintegrated. I think he wound up having to eject, but he was doing it like over Mach 2, and he was killed in the ejection. But the rules change when you get up at those kinds of speeds, and the X-planes are how we learned about it. But the flying tail became standard on aircraft that fly anywhere near Mach speed, and all airliners have a flying tail. We have an entire stab, which is a stabilizer or stabilizer that moves up. And in fact, when we set the pitch trim, okay, on a conventional airplane like a Piper, this Ken, you have a little trim tab that takes the weight off the controls. You have a little trim wheel, and that little tab moves up and down. That puts pressure on the whole elevator, so that the whole thing, you balance out the controls. You don't have that on a jet. Well, actually, you do on an MD-80 or DC-9 series, but that they're in their own world. But generally speaking, you set and they still have a stabilizer control on top of that. But when we do our numbers and get our calculated takeoff weights and everything, and we have a stab trim setting, and we know we're going to be taking off flaps 1 or flaps 2, but the stab trim has to be set up or down, and 2 degrees is the maximum for either way, and normally it's like 0.5. I mean, a big trim setting would be 1.7, and trust me, even with hydraulics, you're not overpowering that, so it's got to be set right. And and that's the kind of thing they learned about for the X1. Some very smart person figured it out because their planes were getting near supersonic speed and they were losing control, compressibility, and other problems. A lot of these World War II piston engine fighters with straight wings were going out of control in steep dives, and the airframes were holding together. It wasn't a matter the planes weren't strong. It was just the controls had no effect. And I imagine more than one guy screwed himself in the ground because of that, and probably had aviation didn't know what was going on, and they probably had no idea what was happening. Supposedly, a German Me-262 pilot claimed he broke the sound barrier in a dive trying to escape. He says he broke it momentarily. That's never been confirmed. I do know that a Douglas DC-8 did it on purpose, that NASA got a DC-8 to see if they could do it. They did. They got like Mach 1.01 in a steep dive for a short time, and they got the airplane back. So aerodynamically, it could handle it, and it could handle the loads, and it could handle the speeds without going out of control. I'm sure they had to throttle back before they pulled out, and they probably came right back out of Mach. But just the idea that they went Mach 1 in an airplane that wasn't designed for it and didn't have ejection seats, and just to add a little something to that, that airplane was then sold back to a freight service that put it back into service, and it flew for many more years without any problems. So chalk one up for the guys at the Douglas Aircraft Factory. But again, these X-planes are the ones that taught us all this and stuff. And everyone was incremental. The X1 got us through Mach 1. Then everybody started pushing for Mach 2. And and people were losing their lives doing this, and Yeager almost did. And he talks about what went wrong, how he lost control of the X1 on one of the flights, and then Crossfield takes the D5582 up through Mach 2. That was the first airplane, and it was a race for the best. The X2, which killed Melbourne Apt. The X2 was a attempt at Mach 3, and I think Apt got there or close to it. And I mean, they didn't realize that the tail was too small. And this is kind of how they learned. Well, I mentioned I mentioned that the X3. Okay, I'm going to have to. Too bad I can't point around in front of this stuff. That would make life easier. If you notice, both of these airplanes have fairly small tails on them, although the X2 does have a much taller, much bigger vertical fin. But the X3 did tell us something very, very, very important. All right? Huh?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. The X3 taught us something really, really important. because it had that bulbous center with those two big heavy jet engines hanging into the belly, the pilot was flying it, and he starts to turn for home, and the airplane goes out of control on him. Now you have to remember, these are test aircraft, so they're packed full of all kinds of recording equipment and sensors. So the X-3 just goes completely out of control. He's able to get it back. All right? No small degree of piloting skill there. And if anybody's ever been on a motorcycle that lost traction, you know, and wiggled on them real bad or something like that, think of it kind of like that. Like you hit a wet spot on the road and you have no traction, so you're using your weight to try and, you know, keep it from laying it down. What had happened was he was going fast enough that that little tail, the shock wave was blanking out that little tail. It was becoming ineffective. So when he tried to turn the airplane, it followed the center of mass. It's like throwing a dart with no tail on it. It just followed, the heavy part just goes forward, right? And those engines down there in the center of the airplane, the heaviest part of the airplane, tried to get out in front of the airplane. And they realized the airplane was, since the tail wasn't working, the airplane was simply following the inertia. And that made it roll. And the center heavy part was coupled to making it roll. Inertial roll coupling. And that's when they started realizing, boys, we're going to need bigger tails. And there's a old saying amongst fighter pilots, you can't have, well, okay, this is talking about airplanes. You can't have too much tail.
Oh, I can see that coming.
And I was kind of like, okay, we got to specify here. This is a family-friendly channel.
Or you could say pilots like big tails.
Just as bad, Ken.
Yeah, baby got back. Anyway, so, but what you don't want to do is go tail chasing. You want the tail behind you, not in front of you. Oh, God, I am so going to get canceled.
There you go. And next, Your Honor, he said this.
Okay, so anyway, so the X2 unfortunately was going so bloody fast because it was, you know, essentially a Mach 3 airplane. It was going so fast that even with that large tail, it wasn't enough. And they still didn't really thoroughly understand what was happening. And they had an idea now, so they're putting bigger tails on them. But when Apt started to make his turn back for the plane just spun out of control. Sadly, and they did, again, they did, this is not a criticism, they didn't know it at the time. If he let the airplane decelerate some more, you know, he might have been able to negotiate the turn. But he followed the profile perfectly. It was his first flight in it, too, and he flew in a very demanding aircraft, and he flew it perfectly. But unfortunately, turned back, it spun out of control, and he did it so violently, it basically knocked him unconscious. And they think he woke up and tried to get out of it just before it hit the ground. But it's, you know, this. But we learned a lot from it. He wasn't lost in vain. But anyway, so all of these X-planes, you know, paved the way for the future. They, you know, they not only looked like something out of the future, they were. And today, we use the technology that came out of them without really giving it a second thought, or a first thought for that matter. But the technology out of these X-planes is in every modern jet and even a few small planes. So the X-15 was really more of a space plane. And the late Scott Crossfield had said that if you fat bottom girls, that would be MIG products. If you according to Scott Crossfield, he believes that had the X-15 program continued to be funded, that we probably would have had a working space plane before we had a spaceship, you know, like the rockets. And don't forget, the reason that we went to space in capsules instead of space planes was really more of a political decision to rush things. And you know, we had to beat the Ruskies, and they had already put up Sputnik, or were ahead of us. And rockets were. If you've ever seen the movie the Right Stuff, with a certain amount of truth, the German scientist says we need to put someone up in something any way we can, quick and dirty, in a pod. He's like, a pod. A cat is not a capsule, sir. That is a spacecraft. No, guys, it's a capsule. And
or as Yeager said, spam in a can,
baby. He was not wrong. And a lot of the test pilots really weren't too enamored with what they were doing. And to an extent, yeah, they largely were passengers. Although Gordo Cooper did have to fly his back manually. And
so, was there some huge political reason why they couldn't just transfer the X-15 program over to NASA?
Well, I think the thing about the X-15 was that it was the program was designed with a set of goals, which it met. All right. It would have required a considerable investment and a lot of time to get it to where it would have been a reusable space plane and basically a proto-space shuttle, which was really what Dinosaur was about. The problem with dynamic soaring, the Dinosaur, was that it was going to take time, and we had to beat the Russians now. And once we committed to using rockets, it just came kind of BDR's big dumb rockets just kind of came the way we did it. And then, what? Reuse a rocket? No, you can't reuse a rocket. They were one-shot deals. Well, if we make a space plane, we can get it back. Well, after we've been to the moon, we've got to tell Congress we got to keep the money coming. How do we keep the money coming, Bob? I'll tell you what. Let's lie to Congress and tell them we'll build a reusable space plane that'll get stuff into space for $100 a pound. They'll believe anything, and they ain't gonna say no because they all got factories in their districts that are suckling off this government teat. NASA never absolutely sure of anything, and but
for all your X-Plane fans, any of you who go to Niagara Falls International Airport, that is the old Bell plant where they built the X-1, the X-2, the X-1A, and the X-1E and B.
That's why the P-39 Air Cobra, the Russians called it the Niagara Groundhog.
And the buildings, the hangar buildings, still say Bell Aircraft on them.
Ooh, that'd be worth going there just for that. And Bell did design the X-1. That's where it was built, Niagara Falls.
Yeah, that's where it was built.
But you can actually get into space orbit using a helium-filled balloon. I don't know if you get all the way to orbit, but you can get a lot. They did have the big donut balloon, that was supposed to eliminate the first stage. It would carry the rocket up in like a donut balloon, and it would get it up to 70,000, 80,000 feet, and then it would fire. And they planned to launch them out of the water, which they actually did in that TV series For All Mankind. They wound up with they were going to make the big Super Saturn, which is like 5 times the size of a Saturn V, but it was so big it had to be launched. It literally had to sit up right in the ocean and blast off out of the water. What could possibly go wrong? Let's take a rocket 5 times the size of a Saturn V with all of its hydraulics, electronics, and everything else, and drop it in the water and launch it from there. I mean, really, what could actually go wrong? You got to give them credit, though. These guys were doing this stuff in the 40s and 50s on slide rules. Water glass full of bourbon, a pack of Marlboro, or probably Camelin or Chesterfields. That's what was a popular cigarette back then. Lucky Strikes and Chesterfields. Lucky Strikes, whiskey, coffee, and
a big steak.
A big red meat steak. And the
computers were people.
The people, yeah.
Machines.
And these guys sat there on drafting boards with whiz wheels and slide rules and horn rim glasses and string ties and,
clip-on ties.
Everybody is saying that with all the mess that's going on with aviation these days, with GE and Pratt and Whitney both putting out these trouble-plagued engines and all the problems with Boeing and Boeing, the Max incident, the door blowing out, and now the spaceship that won't fly. And talking about, you realize we built supersonic jets, went Mach 3 in the 60s, built, went to the moon, basically, as one guy said, basically on coffee and cocaine. And I think he's overselling that bit, but they did. I mean, whiskey, Red Pack Marlboros, just, you know why they were able to do this then?
It's a matter of how much risk they were willing to take.
That's basically it. They were willing to, and Mike mentioned this to me, I think the other day, because the reason, it was one of the SR-71 guys who worked on the program told Mike that, Mike, the reason we did what we did and could do it was because we were allowed to fail. We weren't afraid to fail because you learn from failures. We killed a lot of test pilots and had a lot of bad programs, but that's how we learned. These guys did not die for nothing. And I think about that when I build these little X-planes. And if you've ever seen one in a museum, they're freaking tiny. I don't think any one of us could fit in one. And they're wearing pressure suits. But I'm pretty sure for most of those guys, the parachute was just a decoration. Even Yeager said that the test pilot's attitude is, he says, a lot of pilots, they get in a jam, they go, I've got 3,000 feet left, I've got time to bail out, whereas a test pilot goes, I got 3,000 feet left to save this thing. And I think that's one of the reasons X-planes have always inspired me so much, is because not only do I just like the machine for what it is, I realize what it represents, in the grand scheme of the human spirit. And well, great. Now I'm going to have to go crack up on one of the X-planes I haven't built. I'm getting that. And inspiration striking. Well, the same thing goes like with the Douglas World Cruiser diorama I'm working on, which is just God, that thing got into mission creep. I was just going to build the 4 airplanes in separate phases of getting converted from floats to wheels to floats. Now I'm building cranes and barges and everything because more pictures are coming in. And I'm like, freeze the spec, build the model, move to the next one.
Max the builder.
Max the builder. And I didn't even get out there today. I actually spent most of the day getting ready for this. And that might be a good time to segue into the next section, which is concept cars. I know all you car guys have been patiently waiting. And this, I tell you what, they need to build these concept cars because they are so freaking cool. Let's see, okay. There they are. There it is. All right, let me move that up here. Now
basically, the idea behind a concept car is that, okay, go wild, come up with whatever you want.
Really? So I tell you what. Before we get into the kits, let me talk and Steve, I'm going to hand it off to you here in a second to talk about Autorama. Motorama. And you see, that's why I want you to talk about it.
Okay. I mean, basically, you're transitioning from the aeronautic X-planes to the 4-wheeled X-planes. Because that's really what concept cars were. Concept cars were cars that they exposed the public, the buying public, to different styling and innovations in automobiles, features. A lot of things that showed up in concept cars showed up in the production cars a year or two down the road because they kind of tested them out. Now, the Motorama was a show that General Motors put on, and it traveled around the country. And it went to different cities throughout the United States. And it would always go to a very prestigious hotel that had a large ballroom, and they would completely turn this ballroom into something that would be like out of the World's Fair. And they would have cars that were made specifically to be shown at the Motorama, as well as a couple of production cars. But they would always tout different styling, different features, different materials, and they'd kind of judge the public's opinion of these features and models and techniques, and that's what would make it into the production cars.
Okay. No,
It was really an interesting form of advertising because it brought a finished product to the consumer.
Well, there's
Now,
something. Okay, keep going.
they couldn't touch it. I mean, they were up on turntables, and they had, you know, they had models that you know, had a canned speech, and you know, they'd show the different features of the cars. But they did a lot for General Motors in the 50s, and then that kind of evolved into like the national auto shows. You know, like they used to have a big auto show in all the major cities. So all of the other manufacturers, they'd make a couple of cars for each show, and they still do that today. You know, and they have the LA Auto Show, the Chicago Auto Show, the New York Auto Show. Now, I see up in the left-hand corner, you've got the Parade of Progress Futureliner.
Mm-hmm.
They made, I believe it was 6 of them, and they would travel around the country, and they would go to a spot in town. The side where you see the General Motors Parade of Progress would open up, and in each one of the trucks, they had a different display that showcased GM technology. One of those was restored about 2 or 3 years ago by Kindig out in Salt Lake.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a great job on it, and it recently sold for like $4 million.
I'm trying to upload it here real quick. I just found a picture of what you're talking about to show the. Give me a second here to upload it. But Ed's Auto Reviews showed some footage of these things, and I found the buses as impressive as anything else.
The bus is fantastic. I've seen it, and it, you know, the side there. On the side of the GM, on each side, that's a door.
Uh-huh.
And right behind that is where the engine is. It's a big diesel engine. And then there's staircases on each side, and they go up into that cockpit, which is where you drive it from.
It seems to me a vehicle like that might have had a commercial application. I'm halfway surprised they didn't make them.
Would have been a huge. You could have shipped a lot of stuff in it. I don't think Amazon would have used them, though.
I've noticed that the front tires, there's 2 sets on each side.
I saw that also. It does look like it's dual front tires as well as dual back tires.
Yeah, it's quite an impressive machine.
I think it absolutely is, and it looks good too.
Yes, it does. And they, you know, they traveled the country for several years. You know, and then they retired them because they just felt it wasn't cost effective anymore.
Well, it's funny you should bring that up because Ed actually brings up in his the video that I'm talking about that he said what killed the Autorama was television, because now they advertised on TV and it was reaching so many people. The Autorama reached people with a visual representation before there was TV.
Yeah, but the Autorama was, you know, you could feel it, you could touch it, you could smell it.
Yeah.
You know, it was, you know, but the cost became too prohibitive. You know, like you said, television could reach many more people, but, you know, you just didn't. Now, the picture that you showed earlier with the Bonneville Special that was next to it, the little green car, that's at the auction.
Hold on, let me, there it is, yeah.
That was at the auction where they auctioned it off.
Oh.
Yeah. Because they auctioned that and the Bonneville Special off.
Wow.
But, you know, when you look at this, when you look at these slides of the kits, you know, now you look at Premier's Model Rama.
I just brought, it'll be a few seconds where you see it, but I just brought that up.
Oh, okay.
But, in fact, Premier's Model Rama, 4 complete kits: the Eldorado, the Starfire, the Corvette, and the Skylark.
Yeah, I mean they were production cars. They weren't they weren't futuristic designs, but they put 4 kits, and they played off the Motorama name with Modelrama.
Uh-huh.
You know, and you got 4 kits in one box. Now, I know the Precision Miniatures LeSabre on the bottom is one of your favorites.
Mm-hmm. Got one right here.
32nd scale, that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The Club de Mer is just great. But the other thing is, a lot of the model kits of so-called dream cars of this day, they came up with a lot of kits that you could sort of make your own car.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
It came with different wheels, different tires, different interiors, different roofs, and it was kind of like a build-your-own custom car kind of thing. And then the accessory packs, which came later, where you could put skirts and louvers and antennas and all that to customize your own car, were kind of an outpouring of this, But the thing is, like you take Revell, you see the Club de Mer. Now that kit, they did real well with that kit. The other kit they did was the Futura.
Yeah.
But those are the only two they did. Now, there were many more, not only Autorama cars, but there were cars from Ford, there were cars from Chrysler, and they didn't get made into kits.
Well,
excellent subjects.
Supposedly the first concept car, as we know it, that was designed as a concept car, was a Buick Y-Job, which is my favorite. John Jones says it's still his favorite. Now, I mean, I love them all, but that's probably my favorite. I actually like that one better than the LeSabre, and I love the LeSabre. But they said that Harley Earl, probably did what we'd consider the first concept car. And it was a while before they started making it a thing. But once they did, and the thing is, I look at the concept cars and I'm like, they should have did a short run of them, because they would have sold a bunch of them. I mean, I'm sure, I know it costs money, but I'm sure they could have made money on it. But getting back to kit model concept cars, getting to more modern stuff, I downloaded what I could find, and there are a few kits of them. For me personally, I think the Chrysler Atlantic, the big one in the center, is probably my favorite.
Which was a real car, and it was a running, driving car. And as a matter of fact, it won a designer's award at Amelia Island when it was made. It was made by Tom Gale, who was the designer for Chrysler at the time, who designed the LH cars. And it's a beautiful car. And that's the only kit of it. Lindbergh was the only one who made a kit of it.
I'm surprised that didn't become a production car. It kind of reminds me of the Viper.
It reminds you of a 30s Talbot Lago.
Yeah.
Because they had a similar shape. It's sort of a modern take on that design. It's a beautiful car. I mean, God, I've seen it. It's just spectacular. Now, you look to the left of that, you have the little Dodge concept vehicle.
Uh-huh.
The little bronze one.
Yeah, the little Maisto.
Yeah, that was a, they did make a plastic model kit of that. That was the Copperhead. And that was a design study, and that kind of led to the Crossfire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, the upper left, the Pontiac Banshee, what do you know about that? Because that kind of looks like a souped-up Camaro.
Well, it was a souped-up Firebird.
Oh, okay.
It was what they envisioned that, it was a future sort of rendering of what they felt a Pontiac Firebird would look like.
That'd be a cool kit. I mean, it's a cool looking car. I can certainly see it selling.
Yeah. Well, it'd be good if you wanted to, park under a car in front of you.
We talked about the Bat cars last time. They're kind of cool, but I don't think they were anything
The Bat
serious.
cars are amazing. I mean, they are absolutely amazing cars. I mean, there's only 3 of them, but they are just spectacular.
Now, this Aston Martin AMV 10 concept car, it's Yal Modellini makes a lot of concept car kits, by the way, guys. So if you want to, they check them out. Now, sometimes they just make the bodies for them, but I've never even heard of the AMV 10.
Well, Yeah, it was just a styling exercise that they did. You know, Aston Martin, McLaren, you know, the higher end, even Lamborghini, you know, every once in a while they do a one-off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that they try to take the styling of the car to a 10 of 10. You know, is one that they made. The one that really has no correlation to any real car is that Charger 3.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they made that in 68, 69 when they had just introduced the second generation Charger. And the part with the windshield, that lifts up, and that's how you get into the car.
Uh-huh.
But that was just, that was when the Corvette went to the shark body, so they were trying to sort of take some of that.
Hey, cool looking car. I don't think it'd have been very practical to lift up windshield.
No, it wouldn't have been practical at all.
But it looks cool. The Mid 4 concept car by Nissan, that looks like something that actually did go into production.
Yeah, that not exactly. It's kind of, but some of the MR2 looks a lot like it.
Uh-huh.
You know, I was watching a thing today, and there's a company who they took a really trash Toyota 2000 GT and redid it,
mm-hmm.
and they did a fantastic job. The car was amazing.
Well, another one that I found a little surprising, because it's not what you expect, was the Volkswagen, this W12 Roadster concept. You know, not exactly what you expect from the People's Wagon, but they
come out with some pretty good, concept cars every couple of years. They do come out with some interesting stuff. I mean, the new minivan, the old van that we're used to seeing from the 60s,
mm-hmm.
that they came out derived from a concept one that they did.
Oh.
So, they do make it into production with certain features and certain parts of the styling,
Well, I don't know anything about WMC models. I never heard of them before, so I don't know anything about the kit. But it looks like a Colombian flag, so I'm not sure where that company's even from. May not be Colombian, but it looks like it. And we got let's see, what was the other one? The 2006 Chevy Camaro concept. Really doesn't look like a concept car. It looks like an 06 Chevy Camaro.
No, that kind of looks exactly like the Camaro. Yeah.
But it's nice to see that somebody's making some kits of some of these things, because concept cars are cool. And
most of the concept cars that you say, gee, I would really like to see, but no, what we consider to be mainstream manufacturer makes them.
Uh-huh.
Usually somebody makes a resin one somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Just about all of them have been made, but they're usually resin kits or white metal kits.
Yeah.
I've
built some white metal kits. They're kind of tricky to work with.
Well, it's like doing a real car, but smaller.
Yeah, but there's no glue that wants to bond with the stuff. It's metal.
Yeah.
And I built this white metal howitzer, which is over my shoulder, and it's like I basically got all the parts on there. I'm like, yeah, they better press fit, because this glue just runs right off of them. But I see the concept cars like the Y Job and stuff like that, and I just think, man, those things are pretty. They really should. I bet if they put that in production, would have done well.
You have to understand, like, you take the Y Job and the LeSabre.
Mm-hmm.
They were Harley Earl's personal cars. He drove them for years.
Mm-hmm. They're both still around.
Yeah, they're still around. But I mean, these weren't like, a lot of concept cars
were destroyed.
Are just rollers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
A lot of them don't have running gear. Some of them are just, they make them for the show and they look good. Now, a lot of them are regular cars. The Atlantic was a regular car. The Copperhead was a regular car. But a lot of them weren't. And they just roll them up and then they roll them back.
Well,
But it's an interesting way for the manufacturer to gauge, what the consumer's going to do. I mean, that's how the Viper made it to production.
well, there were other kit models of concept cars. Was it Renoir? Who was it that made They had like 6 of them.
They were cars that were never made. They were renderings.
Oh, okay.
When Exner left Chrysler, he became an independent, designer. So he partnered up with someone who had some, at the time, I guess they didn't call it venture capital then, but they had money. And they were going to bring the Duesenberg brand back.
Oh.
And he penned a very magnificent looking car, and they made a prototype, and they were going to sell it. And then he drew Stutz and 5 or 6 different cars of old brands,
Right.
and Renoir made models of them.
Right.
And you can't find those things today. They're like hen's teeth.
Okay, I just found a kit model, the Renoir Stutz 125th scale, $225, and they're out of stock. Yeah, let's see, 200. File, save as, JPEG. Let me just get a picture up here real quick of what we're talking about. I know most of the glue troopers are probably familiar with it, but visual aids always help. Let's see, there it is, Stutz. This is the Renoir Stutz. They made, I think you said 6, right?
Yeah, there was a Stutz, there was a Duesenberg, I can't remember the other 3, but there were 6.
And it's a pity because they're beautiful cars. All of them have that modern look to them. I think, and I remember seeing them. I found a thing with all 6 of them. You had told me the what you just said about them, and I was like, why didn't they go into production? My God, these things are beautiful. They would have sold themselves, especially back in the 60s.
They were a modern take on classics.
And
well, if you looked at the car that for a brief time in the 80s the celebrities all wanted, which was the Stutz Blackhawk, which was made in Italy. I mean, Elvis had one, Frank Sinatra had one. Those guys. I mean, that was basically a Pontiac Grand Prix with a Italian body on it.
I found it. Revivals by Renoir. Hold on, copy image. Edit, paste. Give me just, I kind of have to go through a little process here. Crop, file, save as, JPEG, and we'll call that Renoir. Save. And there's 7 of them. And, okay, plus, image.
And each one of them would look great as a full-size car.
They're beautiful. They absolutely would. Okay, here we go. Here they are. And we got the Mercer, the Stutz, not sure what the one on the bottom is, Packard, Jordan Playboy, the Bugatti, and another one.
Probably Duesenberg.
I guess in the lower left one's probably the Doozy. Kind of has a Duesenberg feel to it. But what are the great classic cars of the past? They are here in great new versions. Modern versions of what family would like today if they were produced today. Okay, I would say my favorite is probably the Bugatti because I love drop tops.
I'd go with the Stutz.
It does look good, although Stutz would be my hard top. And
Packard would be a close second.
Yep, those cars would sell themselves. And so would the models. Now, did Renoir made the models, though, right?
Yeah, they did. They did very well with them.
Yeah, I imagine they did. That's why you can't find one now.
They disappeared. I mean, you know, and nobody ever. I have no idea where those molds are. But I mean, if I had those molds, I'd be repopping those.
Well, let's just do a little quickie revivals by Renwall on Evil Bay. $150 for a Mercer. Actually, every one of them's going for over $100. There's a 66 Mercer for $150 and one for $200, $250, $385, and there's not a lot of them available. One guy saying the modern Duesenberg for $99, buy it now. So they're all 100 plus, and some people are wanting more than that for them. They're averaging about $150 a piece.
I mean, it's the kind of kit, you know, you go to a swap meet, you go to a model show, and you go to the vendors, you never see these kits at the vendor.
They won't last. They won't last 5 minutes at a.
No.
Somebody will scarf those up so fast. Next time I go to a Pam's Con or a Jack's Con or a Model Palooza, I'm just going to stick a wad of... I'm going to take my drinking and gambling money and just spend it on models.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sure Monica will like that.
Well, whiskey or styrofoam, take your pick.
Because you're drinking and... Well, because you're drinking and gambling money.
Well, they said... spent most of my money on booze, music, and gambling. The rest I wasted. But the the reason I'll do that is because I have 300 kits here that need some attention, and got to be honest, there's some of these kits I look at and they kind of intimidate me. Because I know
the thing that intimidates you is the amount of time that you know you would have to dedicate to it to make it come out the way you want it.
Yeah, and you have to do it. I mean, you've got to dedicate it, because what's the point otherwise? And but you know, we grew up building 12-piece Aurora kits, or maybe 100-piece cars if you were into that. 40-piece tanks. Now you get kits that have 400, 500 pieces. And and then there's always the other thing about, you look at it, I really want to build that big 1/32 scale B-25. And you look around and go, where am I going to put it? And we need to add a room to the house. I'm probably
The other point is, if you're going to make it, you might as well make it look good.
Oh yeah. I was looking in the Tarbis the other day. I'm going to buy another set of those big plastic shelves. And what I'm doing is rearranging some of the models. So at least 2 of those plastic shelf racks, and I know they're not adjustable or anything, but they're deep and they're wide. They're going to be just for displaying models. I'm going to, put something over the shelves so they don't have holes in them, because they're really storage. But that way, that's where the bigger models will probably end up going. One of the reasons I put the Godzillas up here is to make room on the sci-fi shelf. In fact, this is actually going to go on the science fiction shelf. That's the Tremulous Interceptor, which, Tremulous is the guy who designed the Tucker. And so making room for, and it's a strategic thing. But the nice thing is, as you make the room, more space opens up in other places, because I still have more rockets to build, and now I'm going to have a place on top of the rocket shelf for them. So you have to strategize where you're going to put your models. You got to think ahead.
When you go to that great pilot aircraft plant in the sky, they'll come in and look at your house and say, "Oh, you had a 9-year-old."
A very well-heeled 9-year-old. He could afford Tamiya. And I kid you not, when I was a kid, there amongst model building was still kind of a big thing. Actually, more of my brother's group than mine. But there was actually you go to the hobby shop, and there was actually a almost a classist system. If you were at one of the few stores that still had decent selection of models, and you were looking at the monograms, and Revell 148 scale fighters or whatever, you were like, yeah, just average kid. But if you were looking at the Tamiya kits and were buying a Tamiya kit, well, you were very much Mr. Upper Class there, because you had Tamiya money. And I'm not sure, but I think as a kid that may have actually been a phrase. He's got Tamiya money. And by the way, that hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't. It's the number's gone up.
Yeah, but you go to Hurricane Hobbies and you got the kids over there on the looking at the Atlantis kits, and then you have the hoity-toities looking at the Tamiyas. I'll take that King George V for $350. And Ian's got some nice high dollar stuff in there. I mean, he's got the big Phantoms and the big warships and everything. By the way, I stumbled onto a video just a couple of days ago, and I didn't think to link it or anything, but it was actually about RCs, and it was about why AMA is having trouble getting people and why flying clubs are dying, and a lot of it is, now a lot of the RCs are they're foamies, they're pre-made, the people aren't building them like they used to, and they're with bind and fly and all the safety and the apprentice, all these things that are easier to fly. People are just going to parks and flying them there, and they don't want to put up with the stuff that goes on with AMA and with all the club rules and everything, the long drive out there and stuff like that. And but one of the point I was getting at was they talked about there are very few dedicated hobby shops, and they showed a 360-degree panorama of Hurricane Hobbies, and I'm about 90% sure that's the footage I shot when I did the interview of Ron. By the way, speaking of that, I actually had one of my old videos, history videos, pilfered and recut by 3 different YouTubers. Now, I don't monetize, so I don't care. Actually, I'm kind of flattered. But, I mean, they used the maps that I drew and everything. I mean, trust me, I know my own second-rate work. That was my stuff. It was about Operation Pico. I think we talked about this back when the Cubans were trying to intimidate the Dominicans with MiG fighters by busting the sound barrier over Dominican Republic, because the Dominican Navy had seized a Cuban ship that was coming from Angola. Who knows what nefarious activity it was up to. But it was like where it had no business being, around Puerto Plata. They buzzed it with the Mustangs. It didn't go away, so they sent the ship out, and the Cubans are outraged, and Castro threatened to bomb them the next day. It was called Operation Pico because that was part of the name of the ship. One guy just took my exact video, didn't even change it, and just changed it, did it in Spanish instead of English. Another guy edited more stuff on the front and ear. Another guy just used segments of it, which is fine. I mean, I'm glad that they all have more views than I did. I think I got like 12,000 views. I got like 48,000. Because the whole idea was to educate. And now there's a camouflage scheme you could do. I actually built a Cuban MiG up here, but I've got it in the all metal. But the Cuban MiG-21s had an interesting camouflage pattern on them. They make a nice looking model. And where's Puerto Plata? Puerto Plata is on the northern coast of the Dominican Republic. It's a resort town. And the 2 big resort towns in the Dominican Republic are Punta Cana, which is on the very eastern edge, and Puerto Plata, which is on the north. They also have La Romana on the south, which is where like the cruise ships go. But and they have a few resorts there, but it's not really, like the others. They also have one in Samaná, but that's it's inside the big. The reason I know it so well is I fly down there all the time. Santo Domingo is really more of the. It's not a tourist place. It's like their New York, Washington D.C. wrapped up into one. It's center of government, and but you can go out and look up Operation Pico. I think it was 1977, and I got it. The one I did on my channel in English. The rest have all been converted to Spanish. Tropicana. But the Cubans left the Dominicans a little gift. Fortunately they released the ship before any bombs dropped, but they did pickle off their tank, because the MiG-21, even though it's a fast Mach 2, it's a pure interceptor. It's kind of their F-104, short ranged, extremely fast, straight line, go up, shoot down bombers, come back. although it could dogfight, but it very short-legged. So the Cubans had to send them over, and they had to put centerline tanks on them, and they punched them off before they went over land so they could go mock. And one of them washed up on shore the next day. And they made sure to scrub off all the Cyrillic markings because Castro did not run this by the Russians, so he didn't want them to be implicated in any way. Actually, I saw the video and they gave you. Oh, well, good. I didn't catch that part. Well, I'm glad they did. That's nice. I'm just glad somebody's actually using the stuff and people are watching it. I would, and some of the guys knew more about it than I did and added some extra stuff to it. And it's just one of those things, though, that most people never are. I mean, that could have caused things to really erupt down in the Caribbean. Most people today don't even know it ever happened. And so I'm glad, this is one of the reasons I think it's important for people to read some history, especially the history of their own country, how they got there, because you realize the Cold War wasn't always so cold. I see the feeling about Tesla's lack of quality in those cyber trucks. Yeah, I've seen some of the cyber trucks, and whatever people want, that's their business. It doesn't do anything for me. But
well, they have a different grade of stainless than the DeLoreans had.
Better or worse?
The Cybertrucks are worse. And if you look at the difference between a DeLorean and a Cybertruck, DeLorean it's a rough finish. When you look at it and you touch it, I mean, there's lines in it. It's kind of not smooth. When you look at the Cybertruck, it's smooth. And what a lot of people are starting to do is they're starting to wrap them.
Yeah.
So this way they're wrapping them in color. And a few people have actually had them polished.
Well, Lee McCrazy said it looked good in camouflage. It looked like something out of Halo. It would. It does look like a rhino. Yeah. But you were saying there was a problem with the windows or something? Windshields?
Oh, yeah. There's a problem with the windows. If you tint them with aftermarket tint, which they tell you in the manual not to do, they're starting to get sunroofs and side windows that they're breaking. Because what happens is the tint holds the heat in the window because it doesn't let everything pass through. And over time, it cracks the windows.
Yeah.
And it's not covered under warranty because it specifically tells you not to do it in the manual.
Ken, are you still with us? Ken?
I think no.
Well, it shows he's here. Ken? He fell asleep. Ken? He's in eating dinner.
Either that or he fell overboard.
Oh, not again.
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Yep. I was moving around the boat, and I had to scoot around Debbie trying to get to the phone so I could unmute it.
JM said that combat infantry badges were issued to U.S. soldiers serving in the Republic of Korea in the 1960s. Now, I was in the infantry in the late 70s and the 80s. I knew you could get a combat patch. I didn't know that they were doing infantry badges. Real quick, if you were in the Army and you saw combat with a unit, most soldiers in the Army who have not been in combat, they'll have their unit patch on one shoulder. Okay, I think it's their left shoulder. If they ever see combat with that unit, they get to wear that patch on the other side for the rest of their career, regardless what unit they're in. It's called a combat patch. If you're in an infantry MOS and you see combat, you get the Kentucky rifle with the wreath around it, the combat infantry badge. Normally it's for 30 days in a combat zone or if you get in a bunch of firefights. And I did hear that at one point there were certain times you could get them. We had one guy that got a combat infantry badge in Korea in the 70s because he wound up getting in a couple of real honest to God, bullet exchanges. Or maybe he just got the combat patch. I don't think he qualified for the CIBF or yet. Yeah, I think he had the combat patch, but not the combat infantry badge. in the Army, that's kind of a big deal. Although now almost everybody in the Army's got one because we've been seeing so much conflict in the past 20 years. When I was in the Army, you'd see guys who'd spent 20 years in the Army and they'd have like 5 or 6 ribbons, a combat patch, and a CIB. That was it, because the Army is so stingy with medals. And now you see guys who've been in the Army 2 years, a stack of medals because they got so many new awards that didn't exist before. And plus everybody's going over the sandbox or whatever. And so...
Hey, I knew a guy who got run over in basic training by a Jeep, and he gave him a Purple Heart.
Well, he's not entitled to a Purple Heart unless he's run over by the enemy. And wounds sustained in action.
I guess they figured they were the enemy.
Well, maybe it was a Navy Jeep.
Done everything up.
Well, let's see. I think Elon suffers ADHD and starts things and never finishes them. Yeah, like the Cybertruck. But what I love is Boeing, which used to Boeing and Pratt and Whitney and General Electric. You know, these are the gold standard companies, and now they're having all these problems. And I'm not entirely sure what's going on in their design bureaus. If it's a lack of experience, or if they're just trying to push too much too fast. Or if they're not, my guess is they're not getting the support they need in testing, would be my guess. Because the manager's rushing it to market. Ken, are you on the boat?
Yes.
Yes, Ken is on the boat.
Yes, I'm on the boat.
Okay. And this is why I introduce us, to all the planes aloft and all the ships at sea. I would love to do one of these live streams from flight, but maybe on my retirement. Because I would be retired when I landed. And again, maybe I could do it if I was traveling as a passenger. I wonder if you're allowed to live stream from an airplane. I have to ask about that. But anyway, like I say, a couple of weeks I'll be heading out to see Mike in California for a couple of days. I got all kinds of goodness planned. And hopefully, I got a lot going on the next few days, so I'm going to be super busy. But I'll try to get some stuff out. And
don't you have a birthday coming up this week?
Well, that's part of what I'm going to be busy with. My brother's birthday is tomorrow, or the party for it is, and then mine's a couple of days later, and my anniversary. And I got my medical coming up, and I got to get a bunch of paperwork for the doctor, and blah 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 blah. By the way. Before I go, on the Gus front, the kitty cat. Gus is starting to kind of get used to the place, all right? He'll walk around the house. Honey is not handling it well at all.
Not good.
I won't bore you with the details, but she is, not going great. And so we're going to see what we can work out. But she is definitely my humans, my house, and she is not a sharer. But so we'll see how that pans out. We're doing the protocols, write down the numbers, the gradual exposure to scents and stuff, but an astronaut named Gus. What's your other name, son? Ivan. Oh, maybe Gus isn't so bad. And if anybody asks, yes, he's named after Gus Grissom. I mean, the original owners didn't, but as far as we're concerned, that's where he got his name from, although it's short for Augustus. And we were going to give him another name, and I was thinking Laser Cat. But anyway, we'll see how that pans out. Trey, what? Oh, I thought you guys were saying something. Heard a burr.
Nope.
Okay.
And then next week there'll be another live stream.
Trey, if I get a chance, I'll get it with you about some pictures. And one of the things I think we should include that I don't think we've ever included on any of our live streams is talking about building kit model motorcycles. I've only built one real kit model motorcycle. It was the Revell Vincent Black Shadow, and it was one of the biggest challenges I ever did. And Trey makes masterful motorcycles. He's done some real works of art. You check out his channel, and I think at some point it would be a good idea to talk about motorcycles, and we work that out with you, and we can come over and take pictures, or have you over to be here live or whatever. But as far as I'm concerned, to me, the easiest models to make are tanks, because I can cover up all my mistakes. The hardest thing to make are motorcycles. The hardest thing to rig are biplanes. And the hardest thing to get right I'm still challenged when it comes to painting. It's like, no matter how much I burnish stuff down, clear coated, I always manage to find the weak spot in the tape and get myself a nice red, bleed or something.
Oh no, boats are pretty tough to rig, sailing ships.
I'll tell you why. I've only done the one, which is, well, you can't see it, but it's right up there. What I like about, and Bruce does these, and he showed me some really nice tricks to do. Well, with ships, at least the stuff's a little more accessible normally. But there's a lot more of it. And definitely work from the inside out. And I've seen model ships where the guys have the stuff that actually works. I mean, the pulleys work and everything. That's just insane. But
well, did you ever see a guy build a ship in a bottle?
Don't even start it on that.
Yeah.
I know the ones where they collapse and put them in and pop them up.
Yeah.
But some guys actually can reach in with tools and fine tune them.
And then the mess stand up and all
that's just amazing. I'm the kind of idiot that would build the ship and then just blow the bottle around it.
My uncle did that when I was a kid. He showed me how to do that. I was amazed.
That's something, isn't it? That's talent. Well, guys, we're coming to dinner time, so I'm going to wrap things up here. I want to thank everyone.
And won't we have a special live stream next week from Hurricane Hobbies?
I talked to Ian yesterday, and we are planning to have it from the shop next week. That'll be the birthday, my 63rd birthday. So that'll be the birthday one.
Yes.
And
make sure you all call in with birthday wishes for the birthday boy next Saturday night.
And I plan on bringing Max a very special birthday present that will entertain everybody.
Wow. I can't wait to see that.
I don't know if I should be excited or scared.
Maybe a little of both.
Be a little of both. It's always easier that way.
Yeah, what could go wrong?
Hopefully everything.
Yeah.
Well, guys, on that note...
Look at it this way. Ian's already been exposed to massive pain.
Ow. Too soon. Well, guys, I'll let you say your goodbyes, and then we'll let everybody run. And I'll loop the outro.
Good night, troopers. Thanks again for tuning in. We hope we enjoyed your company. We hope you enjoyed ours and what we had to show you tonight. And we'll look forward to seeing you at the big birthday bash next weekend.
Yes, next weekend. You do not want to miss it. It's going to be spectacular.
Okay, now I'm scared. Guys, take care of yourselves, and as always, model on.
We know where you are. We know where you're going. We know who you are. We know everything. We know who you call. We keep an eye on you at all times. No matter where you go, we will be watching. We are Google, and we see everything. We track your every move. We give that information to anyone who will pay. We know how much you're burning, how much you're consuming, how far you can go. We control the automation that controls your car. We have control of the autopilot. There's no sense in resisting. We will be watching. Wherever you go in your car or on the internet, we know what you consume, and we will influence how much and when you eat and drink. Take your somnambulance formula on schedule. Remember, no matter how much this silver city on the hill may glitter and gleam, you are being watched, and you are always under our direct control. Dissent will not be allowed. We will control your opinion. The algorithm knows all, hears all, sees all. We listen through your cell phone when it's turned off. We watch you through your computer. The algorithm never takes time off. Always watching, always calculating. We are Google, and we have your browser history. You will comply. Resistance is futile. You can run, but you cannot hide. We will allow you the illusion of freedom. It is only an illusion. We are Google. We control the internet. We know everything. We know where you are. We know where you're going. We know who you are. We know everything. We know who you call. We keep an eye on you at all times. No matter where you go, we will be watching. We are Google, and we see everything. We track your every move. We give that information to anyone who will pay. We know how much you're burning, how much you're consuming, how far you can go. We control the automation that controls your car. We have control of the autopilot. There's no sense in resisting. We will be watching. Wherever you go in your car or on the internet, we know what you consume, and we will influence how much and when you eat and drink. Take your somnambulance formula on schedule. Remember, no matter how much this silver city on the hill may glitter and gleam, you are being watched, and you are always under our direct control. Dissent will not be allowed. We will control your opinion. The algorithm knows all, hears all, sees all. We listen through your cell phone when it's turned off. We watch you through your computer. The algorithm never takes time off. Always watching, always calculating. We are Google, and we have your browser history. You will comply. Resistance is futile. You can run, but you cannot hide. We will allow you the illusion of freedom. It is only an illusion. We are Google. We control the internet. We know everything.